It was a crisp Thursday morning at Jefferson Middle School in Birmingham, Alabama. The sun climbed steadily into the sky, casting long shadows across the weathered parking lot asphalt where school buses pulled up with their familiar grumbling engines. Students streamed out in their usual morning rush, chatting, clutching phones, backpacks hanging low, eyes searching for familiar faces. The typical organized chaos of morning arrival was in full swing. For 13-year-old Trinity Hayes, however, mornings began differently. She waited quietly by the flagpole, watching classmates flow around her as if she were invisible. Trinity was petite for her age and soft-spoken, accustomed to being overlooked, until she wasn't. As one of just 3 wheelchair users at Jefferson, Trinity had been born with spina bifida. She'd never known life without wheels beneath her, but that hadn't dimmed her smile. Her eyes shone with intelligence, her classroom contributions were thoughtful, and her laughter could brighten any room. Unfortunately, that didn't stop students like Camden Brooks from treating her as lesser. Camden, 8th-grade football star, tall, arrogant, and from a family whose name adorned the school gymnasium, had little tolerance for anyone who didn't fit his narrow definition of normal. He never stated it explicitly. He didn't need to. His mockery, sidelong glances, hallway blockades, and imitations of her wheelchair's squeak in class said everything. That morning, Trinity approached the school entrance when the incident occurred. She was nearly at the front ramp when Camden and his 2 sidekicks, Hunter and Mike, deliberately positioned themselves in her path. They stood silently at first, arms crossed, staring down with disdainful expressions, as if viewing something broken. Hunter reached out, flicking her wheelchair's rim. "Ever considered installing some nitro boosters on this thing?" he asked with a snicker. Trinity gripped her wheels tighter as Camden stepped forward. "Let's clear a path," he announced. But instead of moving aside, he grabbed the front of her wheelchair. With one swift motion, he tilted it backward just enough to unbalance her. Trinity's arms shot out desperately as the chair tipped and fell. She landed hard on her side, the impact seeming to freeze time at the school entrance. For a moment, everything went still. Then came the laughter. Some students covered their mouths guiltily. Others looked away uncomfortably, but nobody moved to help. Trinity lay motionless, her backpack slipping off her shoulder, books scattered around her. She didn't cry or scream. She just gazed skyward, whispering something only she could hear. That's when someone finally took action. Amia Cross had just stepped off bus number 12. She witnessed the aftermath, the fall, the laughter, Camden's smug grin as he high-fived Mike. Her hands clenched into fists, and before realizing it, she was pushing through the crowd. Amia wasn't particularly loud or popular. She wasn't class president or a straight-A student, but she possessed something else. A quiet intensity that only became noticeable when ignited. She knelt beside Trinity, helped her into a sitting position, and examined her scraped elbow. "You okay?" Trinity responded with a tight-lipped nod. Amia looked up. "Hey." Her voice cut through the silence like lightning. "You think that's funny?" Camden turned. "Mind your business." Amia rose slowly to her full height. Not tall, but enough. "It is my business." The crowd began shifting now, students gathering like spectators to a showdown. Camden smirked. "What? Planning to lecture me? Are you her caretaker now?" Amia didn't respond verbally. Instead, she stepped forward, bent down, and helped Trinity back into her wheelchair. The hallway monitor finally jogged over, predictably late, asking what had happened. But nobody spoke. The boys melted into the crowd, leaving. Only tension thick as fog, but the story wasn't finished. What Camden and his friends didn't realize was that the school's annual Unity Challenge was scheduled for later that day, part of a statewide initiative promoting inclusion through team-building activities designed to bring students together. Everyone would be watching. Students, teachers, even parents. That's when Amia formulated her plan. During homeroom, she approached Miss Carter. "I want to compete this afternoon, And I want Camden on my team. Miss Carter blinked in surprise. You certain about that? Amia nodded firmly. Absolutely certain. By noon, the temperature had risen, and excitement buzzed around the field behind the school. Teachers arranged cones, relay stations, and obstacle courses. The Unity Challenge kicked off with upbeat music and school spirit. Teams were supposedly drawn randomly, but Amia had carefully arranged hers, enlisting Coach Ramirez's help to pull strings. Camden, Hunter, and Mike stood together in matching red shirts, arms crossed, already looking bored. Then they spotted their team leader. Amia approached confidently, clipboard in hand, looking directly at Camden. Today's challenge is about teamwork, she stated, but let's make it interesting. Final event, obstacle relay. Winners choose someone for the principal's leadership. Lunch next week. Losers handle cafeteria cleanup for a week. Camden's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Deal, he replied. 30 minutes later, the obstacle relay began. Teams had to complete a course featuring sprinting, climbing, balance beams, and one special element. The final leg required a wheelchair push, with the seated student holding a baton. Camden scoffed when he saw it. Seriously? Amia smiled. You're pushing her. He stared in disbelief. What? She nodded toward the field's edge. There sat Trinity in a navy blue t-shirt, her bruised elbow bandaged, her expression calm but unreadable. Trinity wheeled herself to the final station. Camden clenched his jaw. She can't. She's the final runner, Amia interrupted. Rules say one teammate rides, one pushes. Let's go. The crowd stirred with interest. Teachers leaned forward. Coach Ramirez blew his whistle. The relay began. Camden, driven by a mixture of ego and bewilderment, ran his segment as if his reputation depended on it. He tagged Amia, who tagged Mike, until finally they reached the wheelchair station. Camden jogged up, breathing heavily, glancing around nervously. Trinity waited patiently. He grabbed the handles, muttering under his breath, and started pushing. But the course wasn't smooth. It featured cones, bumps, and uneven terrain. At one point, Trinity calmly leaned leftward. Slow down. You're tipping the chair. Camden adjusted his approach. Spectators watched in near silence. Then came the final stretch. Amia and their teammates cheered encouragement. Trinity raised, the baton high as they crossed the finish line. They'd won. For a brief moment, silence blanketed the field. Then applause erupted. First from teachers, then students. It wasn't forced or exaggerated. It was genuine. Even some of Camden's closest friends looked at Trinity with newfound respect. She didn't smile or wave. She simply sat there, breathing steadily, gripping the baton like a torch, her gaze steady and clear. Camden stood behind her, hands still on the wheelchair grips, too stunned to speak. For the first time since that morning, his smirk had vanished. He appeared quiet, humbled, perhaps even ashamed. But Amia wasn't finished. Later that afternoon, in the same hallway where Trinity had fallen, she called a meeting with Ms. Carter and Principal Gaines. She wasn't seeking Camden's suspension. That would be easy but ineffective. What she wanted was more challenging. Genuine change. People witnessed what happened, she explained in the office. They saw a student knocked from her wheelchair and nobody intervened. Nobody spoke up. That's what needs addressing. Principal Gaines, a stocky man with graying hair who had served at Jefferson for nearly 20 years, leaned forward, listening attentively. What do you suggest, Ms. Cross? Amia exhaled slowly. Give us 10 minutes at tomorrow's assembly. Let Trinity and me speak. Let us demonstrate what it means to stand up for others. The following morning, students filed into the gymnasium for the monthly Character Counts assembly. The routine proceeded as usual. Announcements, Student of the Month recognition, a teacher's speech. Most students barely paid attention. Then, Principal Gaines approached the microphone and cleared his throat. Before we conclude, 2 students have something to share. A murmur rippled through the bleachers as Amia and Trinity entered the court together. The room fell silent. Trinity positioned her wheelchair near center court, while Amia stood beside her, microphone in hand. Most of you witnessed yesterday's incident, Amia began steadily. Some laughed, some looked away, some simply didn't care. But here's the truth. Trinity didn't fall because she uses a wheelchair. She fell because someone decided it was acceptable to make her feel insignificant. The gymnasium grew completely silent. Even the faculty appeared tense, uncertain where this was heading. We talk extensively about inclusion here, she continued. We display posters about kindness, but those mean nothing if we can't speak up when it matters. She glanced at Trinity, who took the microphone next. "My name is Trinity Hayes," she said softly, though the microphone carried her words throughout the bleachers. "I've used a wheelchair my entire life, and most days I barely think about it. But yesterday, I was reminded how some people still perceive me as weak, as a target, as someone to ridicule." Her voice wavered slightly, but she persevered. "But here's what they failed to see. They didn't see the countless miles of physical therapy I've endured. They didn't see my mother working, double shifts to afford my braces and wheelchair repairs. They didn't see the nights I spent learning to get up independently after falling." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the audience. "What they saw was simply a girl in a wheelchair, but what I want you to see now is a girl who got back up." The silence that followed. It wasn't awkward, it was charged with emotion. Several students shifted uncomfortably. A few began clapping softly. More joined until nearly the entire gymnasium applauded, not from pity, but genuine respect. After the assembly, Camden found himself walking alone through the hallway. He'd never been ignored at Jefferson before, but now eyes followed him with something new. Not fear or admiration, just recognition, as if his mask had slipped. He didn't notice Amia until he turned the corner near the library. She sat with Trinity, both laughing quietly over a book. He considered walking away, but instead approached slowly. He began, scratching his neck nervously. "I didn't mean for things to go that far. I was just joking around. I didn't think she'd—" Amia didn't blink. "You didn't think?" That's the only accurate part of that sentence. Camden opened his mouth, then closed it. He turned to Trinity. "I'm seriously sorry. I was being a jerk." Trinity looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "I forgive you," she finally said. "But I don't need your apology. I need you to do better." Camden nodded awkwardly. "Yeah, okay." He turned to leave, then paused. "If you ever need help fixing that wheel, I'm pretty good with tools." Trinity gave a slight shrug. "We'll see." By week's end, something had shifted at Jefferson. It wasn't magical or instantaneous, but the atmosphere felt different. More students started holding doors for Trinity. More joined Amia and Trinity at lunch. Teachers began incorporating discussions about accessibility and inclusion into their lessons. Principal Gaines established a new monthly forum called The Circle, a space where students could discuss their challenges, fears, and suggestions for school improvement. Trinity and Amia were the first speakers at the inaugural meeting. Camden attended too. He didn't speak. Not yet. But he listened. That spring, Jefferson Middle School received a state award for inclusive programming. But for Trinity, the real reward came quietly one April morning when she entered the cafeteria and discovered her favorite table already reserved with a handmade sign, "Reserved for Trinity & Co." She smiled, not because she needed a designated seat, but because finally people saw beyond her wheelchair. She was Trinity, and she had risen. Summer arrived early in Birmingham that year, the air heavy with the fragrance of freshly cut grass and honeysuckle, heat rising from sidewalks in shimmering waves. Trinity's days filled with final exams, class, picnics, and preparations for the middle school's Spring Talent Showcase, a beloved Jefferson tradition where students displayed their creativity. There were always dancers, singers, comedians. But this year, something different stirred beneath the surface. The school wasn't merely concluding a semester, it was closing a chapter. And central to that transformation were two girls who had quietly, without seeking permission, redefined what strength looked like. Amia suggested they collaborate for the showcase. Trinity hesitated initially, performing on stage before the entire school had never entered her imagination. "What would we even do?" she asked one afternoon as they sat beneath a magnolia tree near the track. "Spoken word," Amia replied. "You write all the time. That poem about the sky you showed me was amazing." Trinity shook her head. "That was personal." Amia tilted her head thoughtfully. "Maybe, but perhaps someone else needs to hear it too." They spent 2 weeks after school in the library crafting their piece. They wrote about visibility and invisibility, about navigating hallways while others pretended not to notice. They wrote about voices that didn't shout but still shook walls. Amia contributed rhythm, passion, movement. Trinity brought stillness, grace, power. The showcase day arrived, and students packed the gymnasium amid a flurry of glittery sneakers and nervous energy. Parents lined the back wall, many holding phones ready to record. Mr. Hargrove. The drama. Teacher adjusted the microphone between performances, announcing names like an MC at a county fair. When he announced, "Next up, Amia Cross and Trinity Hayes with an original spoken word performance," a ripple moved through the audience. Amia appeared first, scanning the crowd, her expression focused. Trinity wheeled behind her, sitting straight, hands folded in her lap. They positioned themselves at center court, facing everyone. Then Amia began, her voice clear and resolute. "They told me quiet girls don't start revolutions. That silence was softness. That stillness was weakness. But I've seen storms in still water. And I've watched thunder roll in on wheels." Trinity continued seamlessly, her voice gentler but equally commanding. "I've been invisible and unavoidable. I've been a punchline and a question mark. But now I am the period at the end of your assumptions." Their words interwove in perfect harmony, a call and response, a duet not of melody but of truth. The gymnasium fell silent with the kind of silence that felt earned, not forced. No coughing, no phone notifications, just the echo of two girls claiming their space fully, unapologetically. When they finished, there wasn't an immediate reaction, just a beat, a breath. Then thunderous applause. Trinity's mother stood at the back, hands covering her mouth, eyes glistening with pride. Even Principal Gaines discreetly wiped his eye. Camden, seated with his younger brother in the bleachers, didn't immediately applaud. He simply watched Trinity wheel off stage with Amia beside her, both laughing at ease, complete. He turned to his brother, a sixth grader with the same square jaw and stubborn temperament. "See that?" he asked. His brother nodded. "That was cool?" Camden gave a slight nod. "Yeah, it was." The final week of school passed in a whirlwind. Locker cleanouts, final grades, yearbooks filled with signatures and inside jokes. Camden approached. Trinity again in the library on the last day. "I heard you're transferring to Washington High next year," he said, hands in his pockets. She glanced up from her book. "Yeah, they have better special education programs." He nodded. "You're going to excel there." She didn't thank him, just smiled. That was enough. Amia would remain at Jefferson for 8th grade. Though they wouldn't see each other daily, their bond was unbreakable. They made a pact. Check in every Sunday, continue writing, keep pushing forward, and never let silence prevail where truth belonged. During summer break, Trinity and her mother traveled to Selma, walking and rolling across the same Edmund Pettus Bridge where others had marched before them. Her mother shared stories about her grandfather, who had participated in the 1965 movement, explaining how courage wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was a quiet girl in a wheelchair showing up consistently, refusing to diminish herself. Meanwhile, in Birmingham, Principal Gaines invited Amia to co-lead Jefferson's first Student Diversity Council for the upcoming school year. He explained that the school needed students with vision, voice, and most importantly, follow-through. Amia accepted already, formulating plans, new equity initiatives, peer mentorships. ensuring no student would slip through the cracks as Trinity nearly had. When autumn arrived, both schools felt transformed. At Washington High, Trinity quickly found acceptance in a poetry club where students wielded words like armor. She performed her spoken word piece at their first open mic event. Afterward, a junior with green-dyed hair embraced her tearfully. "I needed that," the girl whispered. At Jefferson, Amia led weekly student meetings in room 204. Attendance grew from 5 to 15 members within a month. They organized dialogue circles and conflict resolution workshops. In the hallway above the lockers, the school installed a new mural designed by Amia and painted by art students. It depicted two girls, one standing, one seated, both facing forward with bold, unwavering gazes. Above them, in large block letters, read, "Respect doesn't ask permission. No plaque, no dedication, just truth." Years later, long after the mural faded and lockers were replaced, the story endured. Teachers would point to that hallway, telling new students that's where it began. The courage, the change, the choice to stand or sit tall. And whenever someone asked about that spring afternoon when a girl in a wheelchair was knocked down and another girl stood up, someone would answer, "That's when we all learned what real strength looks like." Because true strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it rolls, sometimes it waits, and sometimes when the world is watching, it rises together.